Into the darkness we shine. Out of the ashes we rise. There's no one like you. None like you. Our God is greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer. Awesome in power. Our God. And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what can stand against? And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what can stand against? Our God is greater, our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God is greater, our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God. Amen.
You may be seated. So today's biblical lesson will be found in Luke 15, 8 through 10. Luke 15, 8 through 10. This is Jesus speaking. Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Does she not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin." In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. So, this week, I had lost my Bible. The past 3 days, I have been looking for it, and I feel like I felt like I looked in the same place over and over again. The church, the Sabbath school, the school, all the different rooms, and then at the house, and I couldn't find it. And my Bible is very precious to me. It's over 10 years old. If you can see it, it's falling apart. Okay. But this thing meant so much to me, and because I didn't have it, something just didn't feel right. It didn't feel complete. Well, this morning, about 3 hours ago, I found it, and I about cried when I found it, and it was up at the school in the resource room next to the copy machine. I don't know how it was there. I could have sworn that I looked there. But, given this Bible that's been through a lot, it's torn, it's broken, some of the pages are even ripped. It's as if that didn't matter to me, because I had spent countless hours with this, and I didn't want to give up looking for something that meant so much. And so, earlier, I just shared with you the parable of the lost coin, and how much more so does God go looking for us, despite being battered, despite being torn, despite being worn from old age. And he even went to the point where he searched for us to the point where he ended up dying on the cross. I don't know if I'd like to say I'd die for my Bible, but Jesus went through great lengths just to look for us, and just like the woman with the lost coin. So it's just a nice reminder for how much he means to us. You know, if this means a lot to me, how much more so do we human beings who breathe air, who have beating hearts, who have minds that work, how much more so do we need to him? So at this point, we move into intentional prayer. And during this moment, it's just quiet, everything is still, and it's just your time with God. And you can choose whether or not you want to stand, whether or not you want to kneel, whether or not you want to move to any area of this sanctuary. It's just going to be a moment of stillness for us to connect with God individually. Okay, and I'll give you guys about a couple of minutes in prayer. Dear Jesus, in this stillness, in this quiet place, I ask that you make your presence known to each of the individuals here today. You know what it is we ask before we even say a word. And we just thank you for always reaching out for us. We are that lost coin, that lost Bible, as an analogy. And no matter how broken we are, no matter how dirty we are, no matter what we've done, no matter what we've been through, you still search after us, that lost coin. Help us to remember in our hearts what you've done for us. Help us to emulate that love with the people that we connect with, the relationships that we have, and the strangers that we meet just off the street. Be with us today, God, and open our eyes and open our ears to what it is you have to present to us in the sermon and also the rest of the praise and worship. Forgive us when we fail you. Reveal to us, God, when change needs to happen. You love us so much, and we just thank you so. Be with us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Now we're going to sing Good, Good Father, and just follow along. You don't have to stand for this one, but I'm going to hear strong praises. There's only a few of us, I think 20. So I want to hear loud, loud singing. There's no one else here. All right. So I'm going to ask that you stand and sing with us.
That's coming up in my throat and it's getting in the way. Okay.
What
guys. Hey, can I get the mic on, please? Sorry, Gerald, I know you're doing two jobs. So, just a few days ago, I'm gonna wait for him to put the volume down a little bit. I was having a conversation with this individual. I asked them to watch today, so I don't want them to feel like it's them. But I had a conversation with a few individuals, and they shared with me that 20 years ago, they had a moment in their life where they were at the lowest with depression. They didn't feel like they deserved to live. And the one thing that stands out to me from that conversation as we prepare for the prayer of surrender is, she said, in those moments, God never helped me, and I never had a so-called Christian come and talk to me. During the prayer of surrender, I always think we go through our week calling ourselves Christians. We go through the week saying we believe in God, but yet the people out there cannot see it. So as we prepare for the message, let's not keep asking God, God, help me to be a good Christian. Now we as Christians believe that that void is God, that void is Jesus Christ, but yet for some reason the world cannot see that. So just help us to be the perfect image as we prepare to hear the message. In Jesus' name, amen. Disculpen, sé español, pero voy a hablar en inglés porque no me preparé mentalmente para hacer el sermón inglés-español. So, yes, we have if you guys are wondering if you're here, there is a program going on in New Creation Church. If you guys are not familiar with New Creation Church, it's a big church that we rent, and there's a camp meeting. After this service, you guys are invited to go, and then tonight they're going to have socials. This is for Jared, from 8 to 10, 8 to 11, for the basketball. We're trying to, if you guys like playing basketball, you can meet us at New Creation Church. It's by 35. You guys can just Google the directions and meet us there. We're going to try to just go hang out with some people over there. Now, a lot of times when someone's going to preach or speak, a lot of times you think, how many people are going to be there? And you always start thinking, well, if there's 30 people, I'm going to feel a little nervous. If there's 50, I'm going to feel a little bit more nervous. But when there's 5, when there's 4, when there's one-on-one, that is probably the most difficult sermon you can preach. Because everyone is just focused on you, and I only have a certain amount of people to look at. So a lot of times, it's much easier to preach to thousands of people because you can just say words and people are having their own conversations. People might not listen, and a few will pay attention. So today, I do believe God has answered my prayers and has sent the right people to hear this message today. I've been praying all week, and I truly have been convicted of what I'm about to speak on. Now, as you guys know, we've been going through the sermon series of what it means to be a Christian in different times. We had the Dark Ages. We had what Pastor Gabe last week preached on, which is during the big movement, the Reformation, or also known, another word is the Renaissance movement. I learned a few things, but then there were some other things I already knew. But one of the biggest things that we forget during the Reformation, besides Bible knowledge increasing, there was the result of great economic change. Before, there was the mindset that there was a group that controlled everything, and from there, not only did religion spread, but we get a lot of arts, poetry, philosophy, pictures, drawings of people that their minds were changed because they said, hey, we can think for ourselves. And of course, the Reformation also brought a great economic move because you knew that your money, you can work and then do something with your money. The mindset back then was you work and you give the money to one entity. And you just work and you do that. But there was this big movement. Now, today we're going to be focusing on what it means to be a Christian today. Now, I've heard a lot of sermons, and I've probably preached a lot of sermons on, well, the best way to be a Christian today is to what? Well, you got to pray. You got to study the Bible. You got to do all these things, and then God will show you how you need to be. But today, I feel like God truly has helped me give the message that it's a lot deeper than that. Now, before we get to the main topic from the Bible, I'm not sure if you guys heard a story that happened here in the last week. I'm going to read a little bit of what they spoke about this individual, and you tell me if you do not connect with that, because I connected with it. It says, he was a seeker, a fragile soul searching for answers of existential questions. He wanted to find balance, to be happy doing what he loved. He struggled with his thoughts about meaning of life and his purpose. This led him to extreme stress. He could not go any longer. He wanted to find peace. He once said, I can no longer see myself outside of who I've become as an artist. When I read these words, I connect a little bit to some of it. Because every day I wake up and I say, God, is this where you really want me to be today? I've been a nurse for 7 years, and I started asking myself, what do I want to do when I grow up? Yes, at 32, I am asking myself, what do I want to do when I grow up? What that means is, I feel like I've accomplished a certain part of my career, my life, but I almost feel like there's more. What else does God want me to do? Most of us probably have gotten degrees, or we're going for degrees, and then you spend time in that degree, and you're like, all right, God, what's next? And that's where I find myself. So this individual found himself in that situation. Unfortunately, this individual committed suicide on April 20th. We know him by the name Avicii. But what's interesting is he gets his name as an artist from a Buddhist translation that literally means the lowest hell. The lowest hell. That's what exactly Avicii means. What this word means is, this is the place where the worst of the worst go. In the Buddhist term, there's hell, but then there's the lowest hell. These are the people that are the worst of the worst, that is where he got his name from. And this individual said, I cannot see myself away from who I am as Avicii. Now, many of you guys might be like, why is he talking about that? I'm going to read one of his songs, one of the lyrics, and just, again, tell me if you did not connect with these lyrics. It says, hey, once upon a younger years, when our shadows disappeared, the animals inside came out. A lot of us are looking for, who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing? It says, one day my father told me, son, don't let it slip away. When you get older, your wild life will live for younger days. Think of me when you're afraid. One day, you'll leave this world behind, so live a life you will remember. My father told me when I was just a child, these are the nights that never die. And just focus on this. When thunder clouds start pouring down, light a fire they can't put out. Carve your name into the shining stars. Go venture far beyond the shores. Don't forsake this life of yours. I grew up during the time that he was very popular. I listened to his lyrics. But when you go back and pay attention to his lyrics and what he is being said, what he's saying, now looking back at my older self, I'm like, no wonder I connected so much. Because growing up, and even right now, if you guys cannot say to yourself that this very moment you are not thinking, what do I want to be doing in 5 years, 10 years, even in a year, you're pretty much lying to yourself, because all of us have unless you wake up and say, I don't know what's going to happen today, you just go, we all are looking for a reason why we are here. Now, we've also come to a point, I'm not sure, anyone ever tried one of those funny Facebook personality tests of who superhero you match with? Yeah? Or which? I'm trying to think of all the different ones. What? Yeah, what food are you? If you were a food, which one would you be? And this is why. The other one is, there's this new one that came out, and I was talking to someone about it. It's called the Enneagram. Now, I have done some of these because we do them for, if you work in the business world, or even here at church, we did it as leaders. You try to find who you are as a leader so that you can connect with those people, or you can find some of the things within you. Now, these tests are very good, but there's something about this test that the article that I was reading says, if you ignore who God made you to be, then these tests will only detach you even further from God. Because the evaluations, if you don't find a balance with what God has truly put you to be, the evaluation tool will only focus on the inner self, and you forget who you truly are as an identity. Now, the person that wrote this article said that she had a hard time trying to find that balance with this enneagram. That's what the tool is used. And she said that she found a spiraling effect that led her to depression because she couldn't find God the more and more she searched. Now, I have never experienced that. I don't know what that feels like. I just know that this person said she came to a realization that once she started focusing who she was in Jesus, she found a different purpose. Now, most of us and many of the people out there are looking for a purpose. We're looking for, why are we here? Why am I getting up every day? Why am I truly living? Anyone ever heard of the DNA tests that are going on? My brother actually just did one. One of those, you send a little bit swab, you send it out, and then it gives you your history, where you come from. There's a lot of popular ones, and he shared some of the results with us, and it was actually very interesting to see that a certain percentage comes from African descent. Of course it does, but just to see it on paper, because deep down, if you search back generations, it went up to 20 generations back. It says there are traces of some kind of Jewish descent, according to the test that he took. 4 generations, 5 generations, and it's interesting to see. It is very interesting to say, hey, according to my DNA that I sent, I connect with these people. Of course, the top ones are the ones they want you to focus, because that's the closest generation who you are. Now, of course, in there, can you imagine what one of the closest that we are to? I mean, if you were to look at me, my brother and I, pretty much, even though he looks different, we share the same, it had there that we were Mexican. Right. Now, most of the times you can say when we were Mexican. A lot of times we say, well, I am just this. Like if you want to be something else. And that is what the whole focus of today is. We tend to want to be something else because who we are, we might not connect so much. So we try to look for another way of who we are. Now, let's go to 1 Kings 4. 1 Kings chapter 4, 29 to 34. There's a lot of mention of what we call the experts in our society. Anyone ever just hear and say, hey, this is the expert on this, this is the expert on this, and you're like, well, let me go read. I enjoy reading at the moment this author, and I actually got to hear a little bit of his message. His name is James Emery White. He writes some books, and they're all focusing on today's culture and society, specifically to younger people, younger generation. So I say, well, let me see what he has to say. Let me see what tweet he did. Let me see what post, because I want to know where he's thinking. So I also do the same thing. Now, a lot of us might say, I enjoy reading this because I like when this person writes, and I enjoy watching this because this person is an expert. A lot of us today, we are thrown with, these are the experts on this, and we look to that. Now, we're going to read 1 Kings 4, 29 to 34. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this king, but he was the expert of all experts during his time. And I'm going to read. It says, God gave Solomon wisdom and a very great insight, and breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand of the seashore. Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all the people of the East, greater than all the wisdom of Egypt. He was wiser than anyone else, including Ethan and Ethrite, wiser than He-Man. Now, I was researching that name right there, because it's very interesting. He was wiser than Kalka and Darda, the sons of Mahal, and his fame spread out the surroundings of the nation. Now just listen to the next verses. He spoke 3,000 proverbs. His songs numbered 1,005. He spoke about plant life, from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the walls. He also spoke about animals, birds, reptiles, and fish. From all nations, people came to listen to Solomon's wisdom, sent by all the kings of the world who have heard of his wisdom. I had never paid attention to these verses. I always understood that Solomon had wisdom. I always understood he was a very intelligent man. Now, when I was researching, when I read the name He-Man, the first thing that came into my mind is a cartoon I used to watch when I was younger, He-Man. Now, He-Man actually means king, seer, in the Word of God. These were a group of people that were in the temple that David had assigned to pretty much oversee everything that was God. But let's focus on Solomon. What was he knowledgeable on? Plant life, animals. Now, the wisdom of Egypt. What comes to mind when you think of the wisdom of Egypt? Have you seen the pyramids? I mean, just think about it. He understood everything that Egypt had at their disposal. He understood it all. I mean, right now we're barely understanding what some of the hieroglyphics are saying, what some of the pictures mean. We're barely getting, we discovered a new wall and it's a small little section. We know what it says. But Solomon understood all the wisdom of Egypt. He understood all the wisdom from the east. He just had the complete knowledge. Now it says here, the kings of the world, people were sent to say, hey, as a king, I don't want to go, because if I go to the other king, what does that mean? But I'm going to send a representative to see what Solomon has to say. Now, if you guys are familiar with Solomon, he was a young guy when he became king. And the one thing he asked for is, God, give me wisdom. Now, he didn't specify what type of wisdom, but God is so great that he said, I will give you all the wisdom. But later on, we find out what Solomon did, but that's not going to be the story today. We're going to be focusing on the last part of his life. Now, who was the dad of Solomon? King David. Who was his mom? Bathsheba, right? They were high school sweethearts, right? No, right? There was a result of something that David did, his dad. He sinned, but somehow God, we're going to start a new series called The Reckless Love of God. I know we've heard these songs and we've heard the sermon series, but God always finds a way to fix our sin. Not to put them to the side and forget them, not to just allow you, but he finds a way to just go through the sin. And then we have Solomon, the wisdom of God that he had. Now, our main focus today is going to be on Ecclesiastes, and I want you guys to go there because this is where we're going to spend the rest of our time. Ecclesiastes 12 to 13. Now, I was reading this article just here 2 days ago, and GQ, if you guys know GQ, this is not probably the best place you want to go for reading articles of what books to read, but for some reason, they decided to make a list of books that you should stop reading. They said, hey, these are the top books that you should just stop reading them because they have no purpose. I read most of the article, and what I get is, according to them, these books either are not relevant today, these books don't make any sense to our culture and society at the moment, and these books are really, we're just going to waste our time reading these books. Now, from the list of books, one of them stood out to me. They said, the Bible. They put it right there and said, this is one of the books that you should stop reading. And I went to go research why they said that. They said, the Bible only has genocide, murder. It is very out of touch with our society and culture today. And there is no truth in it. Now, GQ is not, if you guys know GQ, this is not the magazine you go for to look for purpose in life. GQ is where you go look for if you want to see what new shampoo you can use as a guy. GQ is the place you go where maybe the new shoes that came out. But for some reason, they wanted to put this list of books, and they said, hey, this is the books you need to stop reading because of this reason. Now, we see here that Solomon had great wisdom. Now, the wisdom did not come from him reading. just by himself and him studying. We know that God gave him this wisdom. Now we're going to read Ecclesiastes 12 first. It says, I'm going to give you a few seconds to get there. But before we start, once again, we are at a point as Christians today where the world is saying, hey guys, leave all the material. This is what the world is saying. Leave all the material things behind. Leave everything you have worked for behind. Find a cause, find a purpose, and fulfill what you were made to be. Is that true? Is that what you guys hear? We as Christians are saying the same thing. Guys, leave the material things. Leave the house. Leave this. Find what you were made to be. But what's the difference? How is our message different when everything sounds the same? There is one difference, and we're going to get to it. It says in verse 12 of Ecclesiastes, it says, "Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them. Of making many books there is no end, and much study wearies the body." I didn't really understand this verse. I kept reading it and reading it. Then I went to the commentary, and it was just so amazing to see what God is trying to tell us. I went to a conference, and we're going to get into verse 13, where the whole conference is based on verse 13. And I've preached sermons just on verse 13. And the main part is, now all has been heard. But when you read verse 12, so you have here Solomon. If you guys are familiar with the story of King Solomon, in Ecclesiastes 12:13, he's literally coming to the end of his life and he's saying, guys, with all the wisdom I've had, and if you read into his story, you'll know why he's saying this, with everything I have read. Now, what do we know? What books did Solomon read? All of them. He read every single book that existed in his time. Every single literature that was available to his time, he had read it and understood it. If I were to ask you how many books have you read in your lifetime, what percentage would it be of the books that exist? Less than 1%? 0.0000, I hear Prince. Yet, we like to call ourselves experts. Even the person that has read the most books in our existence today, how many books, what percentage would you say he has read? 90%? No. Would you say 80%? 50%? No. What about 10%? Will we give him that much? 10%? 10%? I would say no. 10% of everything that exists, yet we go to them for knowledge and wisdom. You see where I'm going with this? Now Solomon is saying, be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them. Of making many books, there is no end, and much study wearies the body. Has anyone ever just read a book and you just feel so anxious because you want to read another one of that topic, or you want more? You're like, you know what? I've studied for this exam, but I need to study more. You know what? I've studied in my education, but I need to find something else to study because I need more. I need more. I've been reading here and there this book on emergency medicine. And it's literally every single diagnosis that can walk in through the ER, I'm just reading on it. And I'm like, when I look at the book, I'm like, man, this is so stressful just to think about. I even added an Instagram page, someone's page that all they do is post medical scenarios and you just try to guess what it is. And they have multiple choice. And they have a picture sometimes, they have scenarios, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I think I know what this is. Even when I don't know what the answer is, I can always guess the right one because you are taught to not know everything. You are taught to figure out what it's not. And then you go through the point. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm only a nurse, yet I am able to figure out those things. But I can guarantee you, when you come to me for advice, be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them. In making any books, there is no end, and much study wearies the body. Solomon is literally saying, I have read everything there is to know in his time. I have read everything. I understand everything I can at this moment. Yet, all this gets me even more stress. this knowledge that I've read, according to the commentary, it says, how much wisdom did Solomon have when he is saying, I have read everything? Now, he goes on to say, or there's a statement in the commentary, and I want you guys to pay attention. If there's anything in this message today, it is this statement that is said in the commentary. When the author of truth is recognized as the beginning of wisdom, when the author of truth is recognized as the beginning of wisdom, and study becomes means of seeking to think his thoughts after him, in order that our lives may conform to the divine purpose that gave us being, then study becomes a thrilling pleasure. What it's saying, when you study anything and you seek the wisdom of God in what you're reading, and you say, God, how is this going to serve your purpose? How is this reading for me going to help you? Then everything you read will be different. And the commentary, the next verse says, because everything the world has to offer only creates stress. Everything, the commentary goes to say, everything the world offer only creates stress. It is not saying it's bad. It is not saying to stop reading it. It is not saying do not go to school and go get an education. What it is saying, that will bring stress if you don't know who the author of the beginning of wisdom is. Now, Christians today, when I finished school, I was told you have to have a bachelor's or else you're not a nurse. You need to have a bachelor's. I remember not many years ago, nursing degree, as long as you had a diploma, an associate. Now, if you don't get your master's, you're almost there. If you don't become a nurse practitioner, you are not a nurse. There's always more. There's always more. By the time Karen finishes nursing school, what she has is not enough. When I finished nursing school, they were like, good job, you finished, but now what's next? There's always more. There is always more. When you guys finish school, there will always be the next degree you can get. But the commentary is saying, but if you do not know who the author of the true wisdom is, then you are reading, are studying, are learning without a purpose. Now, some of us might be like, I disagree with that because I believe in education. I believe in education too. I can't wait for my little girl to just learn more because that means I have to be with her less. In the sense of, if you spill that cup, if you knock the cup over, you know what's going to take over? Gravity. She does not understand gravity yet. The cup falls and she thinks, I don't know what she thinks because she loses her mind. She like freaks out. She starts getting mad at the dog, thinking it was the dog's fault. She starts yelling at me. She starts throwing things. She does not understand what is happening with a simple thing that we look at and say, that's gravity. Yet, that's how we are with the things of God. Something happens and we're like, God, why is this happening? We start hitting or getting mad at other people that have no idea what's going on. We start getting mad at the church. Like, church, don't you understand what's happening to me? We start getting mad at our leaders in the church saying, if only they knew. And God is saying, wait a moment. Just like I tell my little girl, just hold on. Let me talk to you real quick. And she relaxes. She stays calm. Now, again, it says, in much study, it wearies the body. In another translation, it says, what we are seeking is for inner wisdom, inner knowledge. But yet, the commentary is saying, seek for the true wisdom. Now, let's read verse 13. It says, now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. I'm going to focus on that. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. I randomly woke up at 5:45 in the morning. Maybe I just needed to go to the bathroom. I don't know. But I woke up 5:45 today, and I picked out a shirt from the drawer, and I put on the shirt, and it was the conference that I went a few years ago, and the conference was literally on Ecclesiastes 13, and all I could look down, it says, when all has been heard. Now, usually when I hear that message, I think about, because the next thing that says in the verse, fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. I always connected it to God saying to us, when you have heard all I have said, fear God, keep the commandments. That's usually how I used to connect it. And when I would go to sermons, I usually connected it in that way. That's what they were trying to tell me. But when you read verse 12, Solomon is literally saying, you have heard me, I've read everything, I understand everything, and you have heard me say, all this only brings this. Please don't even go there. Just seek the word. This is the conclusion. Guys, this is Solomon saying, I have lived the life of wisdom. I understand what it is to know everything. This is the matter. Here is the conclusion. Do not go out there and seek that wisdom. Just fear God. You see how the difference is? Because if we look at it and say, God is telling me, and when I say like this is my Bible, guys, this is my Bible in 2018. God is not saying, look at this and say, oh, wait, this is, Solomon is saying, guys, I have been there. I know what it means to know everything. And it's not as good as it's made out to be. Now, in our culture today, the world says, find a purpose. I meet a lot of people, and there's times that I am that person, but I meet a lot of people that are sad. They're just depressed. I think 5 people this week told me that they were depressed. I'm trying to count. And I always think, God, why me? And it's not even me. But I think I met 5 people today, this week, that were told me directly that they were depressed within the week. And I'm trying to think of the number. Now the world says, hey, find your purpose. When you don't have anything or you don't have the right job, you feel depressed. But when we read the story of what we mentioned earlier from Avicii, now Avicii could pack any type of event. He was there, he will pack it. He had money, and he only truly was famous for about 6 years. He had money, he had everything. He had everything. Yet, was he depressed? So the world says, when you don't have anything, you're depressed. When you have everything, you're still depressed. God says, when you have nothing, you have everything. When you have everything, give it away, and you will have everything. I mean, sorry, I'm kind of like, because I think of myself like that. Because just this week, I was telling myself, what do I want to be when I grow up? Pretty much I was saying, what next degree do I want to get? What other education do I need to do to fulfill my purpose? And during the preparation of the sermon, verse 13 says, now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God, keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. Solomon comes to at the end of his life. He's had many wives. He would marry different queens just to find connection to that realm. He had so many wives, so many concubines. He did everything. There's one commentary that said, with all the wisdom that God had given Solomon, with all the wisdom he had, he couldn't understand what sin was. With all the wisdom he had, with everything he had read, he could not understand what sin was. Because we see, when you read the story of Solomon, sin after sin after sin. With all the wisdom he had, he couldn't see that he himself was living in sin. Now, many of us get caught up in that last part of the verse. I get caught up sometimes. Fear God and keep his commandments. Which commandments? All of them. Now, when you read from Leviticus or Exodus, when Israel is coming out, you read Leviticus and Deuteronomy, you see a list. If you guys ever have some free time and you want to read instructions, a manual, not a TV manual, not how to build this, because I've built so many things that I've never looked at the manual. You know, that's a true man, right? You build something without the manual. And then you're like, look, they even put extra pieces. Man, they just throw it aside. They're like, they even added extra pieces for me. But there is a manual in the Bible. And sometimes we don't understand it. I actually went through it, and I was listening to some of the instructions of God to the people of Israel. There's around 614 to 615. Right? Now, many of us read those and are like, man, God really was kind of nitpicking with the people of Israel. Now, we need to go and understand the story, because they were leaving Egypt. They were pretty much enslaved to Egypt for over 400 years, and They didn't know how to be without anything else. I mean, throughout their walk, what do they say? If only we were in Egypt, we could be able to eat this. If only we were in Egypt, we wouldn't be thirsty. So God has given him instructions, and then he's going to the land of the Canaanites. If anyone's read the history of the Canaanites, if you want to study a group of people of what they did, it's not a pretty sight. The sacrifices. Just yesterday I was reading in the History Channel an article that they found, and it's not about the Canaanites, but just thinking about that. An article that they found a mass grave of over 150 babies. And no baby in the mass grave had a heart. It is the biggest child sacrifice tomb area that they found during excavation. The Canaanites were like that. So think about it. A group of individuals are leaving a land where the Egyptians have taught them so many things, and they're going into a land where they're like this. Wouldn't a good father say, watch out for this, watch out for that, watch out for this? Those are the 615. Now, during that process, they get Moses and say, hey, Moses, I'm going to give you 10. Now, Jesus shows up and says, I don't think you guys are getting it. So I'm going to give you 2. 6 for man, 4 for God. And then Jesus says, but there is one above all. What is that? Huh? Love. Now, most of us say, yes, that is the one I'm going to cling on to. I'm going to cling on to love. Now, how do we know what love is if we don't know who God is? Now, if you want to find out what love is, wait, it sounds like a song, right? If you want to find out what love is, work yourself back. Love, the 2 commandments that Jesus says, the 10 commandments, the 600. Am I making sense here? We need to understand what love is going backwards, not saying, oh, this is what love is, because I understand what love is. We've come to a point in our society where Ecclesiastes 12 and 13 is even louder than before. To finish the message today, it says, Ecclesiastes 12 to 13, it says, be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them. Of making many books, there is no end. In much study wearies the body. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God, keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. Now if you see yourself today and say, what am I supposed to be doing as a Christian in 2018? We usually hear, go out and preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. You guys agree? I agree with that too. But how can we preach of Jesus to a world that does not know who Jesus is? Because we, as Christians, have clouded what Jesus looks like. We want to go preach about Jesus when they have no idea who Jesus is, what he looks like, where he comes from. So a Christian in 2018 is seeking to be a Jesus image of Jesus, an imitator of Jesus, not a follower of Jesus, an imitator of Jesus. So when you come in contact with individuals, they're like, why are you so different? The only reason I'm different is because I am trying to imitate Jesus from the Bible. I was, again, talking to someone yesterday, and they go, do you believe in ghosts, David? And I'm like, it's just like random. They just say, do you believe in ghosts? And I'm like, have you heard the story of Saul? He was a king. And they're like, King Saul. Well, there's a story about King Saul, and I say, he went to talk to a witch of Endor. Witch of Endor. And they're paying attention because they asked me a question about ghosts. I mentioned the word witch, trying to connect them, right? I go on to say the story, and the person was like, that's in the Bible? Wait, so this spirit knew what was going to happen to Saul? Then I went on to speak about Jesus coming in contact with the individuals that were possessed. What I'm trying to get at is, a lot of times we want to say, I'm going to walk with my Bible, and I'm just going to go like that, and they're just going to get everything. Guys, I'm going to be honest, our world today, our country in the United States, when Jazz and I went to the conference, James Irvin White said something that is so mind-blowing. Christianity has moved from the Europe area, from all that has progressed to the North Canada, to the United States. Slowly it is working its way only to the South Americas, South Africa and South Americas. Meaning, as we see our country today, every day that passes, there is less chance that we can speak the Bible. He says that around the year 2025, 2030, if everything continues the way it's going, the South Americas and South Africa would have to send missionaries to the United States to preach the Word of God. Now, you guys are like, that's never going to happen. If you guys know where Pastor Gabriel Perea is going, what are we doing with him when he's going to Scotland? We're sending a missionary to Europe. We're saying, go to Scotland and go preach the gospel. There will be a point where people will have to send missionaries to the United States because everything that is of God is being put to the side. So how can we speak of Jesus when they have no idea who Jesus is? So the challenge today is, I know we went over a little bit, but hey, no one's here at the church. We have the whole day to ourselves. The challenge today is seek to imitate Jesus. Seek the knowledge of God in the Bible. In everything that you do, say, God, how do you want me to use this? It doesn't matter what you're doing. I see a speech pathologist. I see a student. Someone with pharmacy. I don't know what you guys do. Sorry. Sasha, what do you do? Editor. Man, that's just so amazing to work for God with that, because I see mechanics, I see people, I see engineers. I'm sorry, I'm trying to think what everyone else does. Interpreter, sorry. What I'm trying to say it doesn't matter what you are doing if what you are doing is not to serve God. That's why you feel the way you feel. Because if you say, what I am doing in 2018 as a Christian is what God wants me to be doing, and I will give the message in what I am doing, then your purpose is fulfilled, because it says in Ecclesiastes 13, this is the duty of all mankind. And that is the challenge today, to truly imitate Jesus, to truly imitate who he is, so people can truly see his image.
Stand and sing the last song. Awesome God. Su poder, amor grandioso.
bow our heads for prayer. God, just forgive us where we have failed to show your true image. Forgive us where we have shown an image that is not clear to the people around us. Now, we usually speak about the world and us. We are taught that we will live in the world, but not to be of the world. Everyone that we come in contact is not of this world. Everyone that we come in contact is a child of God. Whether we like them, whether we disagree with them, they are a child of God. You're calling a group of people here in the last days, yes, to speak of your soon coming, to speak about this great news that you truly are coming back. But there is something else you're calling us to do. You're calling us to prepare a people to be ready to receive you. You're calling us to truly be prepared and to prepare others. So when you come, you can say, I do find faithfulness in this earth. God, just help us as we leave this place. Help us as we go into the Sabbath school, into essentials, and just study the Bible. Help us to truly understand what your purpose for us is. And just like was said last week, help us to say we will go wherever the Lamb goes. Be with us in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey guys, so just as you guys are saying hi to each other, tomorrow we're having care groups. It's the auto care group at 10 a.m. There's the address. If you guys don't know how to change the oil in a car, we're going to be going through that. Just going to do some basic teaching on that. 10 a.m. how to change an oil in a car. I invite you guys to come. And then also right after this, in a few minutes, we're going to start our Sabbath school. We're going to do it here. Trust me, even though it's big, we're going to have some small groups and breakout sessions.
Are we going to Essentials, right?
I think we're going to do it here.
We're going to